Today is July 28th, 2016, and I am interviewing Mary Bohman, who is the administrator for the Economic Research Service. We are in the studio of USDA's Creative Media and Broadcast Center in Washington, D.C. I'm Susan Fugate. I'm head of special collections at the National Agricultural Library, and I've worked for USDA for almost 40 years. To begin, Mary, please say your name and spell it.
I'm Mary Bohman, and it's Marybohman.
Thank you. To start, tell us a little bit about the Economic Research Service.
So the Economic Research Service, or ERS, was founded in 1961 by President Kennedy at the beginning of his administration. It brought back pieces of the Bureau of Agricultural Economics that had been disbanded about a decade ago, with the idea that USDA needed economic expertise that could take a medium to long-term perspective in order to carry out its mission for farm, environment, and food programs. And we cover that. We cover the breadth of USDA's mission. We provide statistics, special studies, and analysis of the USDA programs and the context in which they operate. And we disseminate everything we do via our website. So you can go to www.ers.usda.gov.
And now if you would share with us some biographical information and going back as far as you would like.
Well, Susan, I am the granddaughter of a farming family, and my dad grew up on a farm, but I'm a city girl from Dayton, Ohio, and have studied international relations and then agricultural economics, and I have my Ph.D. from the University of California at Davis. My first job was at the University of British Columbia in Canada, where I taught agricultural economics. And my areas of expertise are international trade and domestic agricultural policy. And I spent 8 years in British Columbia, enjoyed the teaching and working with students, but the opportunity to go to ERS and work on policy issues was very attractive. And I joined the Economic Research Service in 1997 as the chief of the then Europe, Africa, Middle East branch, which fit my international interest. Worked a lot on trade and trade policy issues, and then have had different leadership positions. Before I was administrator, I was the director of the resource and rural economics issues. So worked on a different set of issues around the structure and performance of our farms, of rural America, and the environment. And for the last 5 years, I've been the administrator.
Can you talk about your experience at the University of British Columbia, and is that what led you to service with USDA? And also compare a bit the Canadian perspective to the U.S. perspective.
Well, the connection is that I really love agricultural economics and what it brings to understanding food, farm, environment, and rural issues. And so that connection runs through my education and professional life. And in terms of differences, I think a lot comes from the role of agriculture. U.S. is a large country with a very fertile land. We have a large population, and we produce a lot of food and varied food given our diverse topography and climate. So that makes us a really, I think, unique or one of the big players in global ag markets. Canada also, ag is a major part of the country's history and plays an important role in some of the provinces. And differences are that it's a much smaller population. Canada has fewer people than California, and has a narrower set of products, focused more on grain and livestock, whereas the U.S. has a much broader set of ag activities.
You talked about being director of the Resource and Rural Economics Division. Can you talk more about that division and what it does, and maybe share one of the successes that you experienced there.
So we're very integrated at ERS in that we cover this set of issues, but each group has a more specific focus. And the Resource and Rural Economics Division looks a lot at the people and understanding their outcomes and how they make decisions. So it looks at farmers and it looks at people in rural America and tries to characterize their current health and well-being, as well as the activities and the motivations. And a key resource for doing that work is the Agricultural Resource Management Survey, or ARMS, that ERS and NASS jointly fund, and NASS does the field work, but we work together on designing the survey. And while I was administrator, we published a lot of very interesting research with that. We looked at the changing structure of farms, but we also looked at some new and emerging issues such as local foods and how farmers were engaging in local foods markets. And we did a pioneering study looking at the marketing systems of local foods, and I think that placed ERS at the forefront of objective, relevant research on local foods that led to a congressional study we completed last year. We also did a lot of work on rural America, trying to understand new drivers, did a major report on broadband that was published while I was administrator, and found that in those areas that had broadband, controlling for other factors, there was more economic growth. And on the environment side, we looked at the interaction between environmental programs and outcomes, and did a really interesting study on the role of ag policy on the health and size of grasslands in the northern plains.
What is your philosophy and your approach to leadership?
Well, I have really enjoyed being a leader at ERS, and it's all about the people. And so we are an agency where our experts shape what we can do. Their knowledge of the ag economy, of rural America, of what Americans eat, but also of cutting-edge economic approaches and how to use data, and then our expertise in telling the story with that data in our reports and on our website. And when you have great people, it's easy to be a leader. And I enjoy the part of working together to decide what's most important, set some priorities, interact closely with our stakeholders, and that way we can ensure that what we produce will be valued when it's released to the public.
ERS celebrated its 50th anniversary in 2011, the year that you became administrator. In those 50 years, major accomplishments in 4 major goal areas were achieved. Can you give us an overview of some of those?
Well, I participated in planning the 50th anniversary celebration, and the overarching theme was ERS's ability to provide timely, objective, high-quality research, and to also keep pace and keep, at least with, if not ahead of, the technologies in doing so. The computer modeling, data management, web, and I think bringing those two together. Some successes that were highlighted in there include finding that there was a pattern of reverse migration, that the migration had always been from the cities towards rural America, but at one point there started to be a lot of reverse migration for retirement destinations, living in more rural, amenity-rich areas. And Calvin Beal, a leading scholar at ERS, and his colleagues came up with that finding. There was also important work to help inform the Uruguay Round Agreement on Agriculture, which was the first international trade agreement in agriculture. And ERS played an important role in developing measures of countries' domestic policies. And then in terms of the big changes, ERS created a food division in the 1990s, and this really reflected the increasing importance to USDA of the nutrition programs and the growing obesity and other food policy issues in the United States. And since then, ERS has developed measures of food insecurity that are widely quoted. We did this with the Food and Nutrition Service, and we've made available a rich set of data to describe what people eat. So I think those are three highlights that span our program areas. Maybe add one more is on the farm side, ERS developed new ways of measuring farm activity. We developed with NASS a measure of household farm income, not just farm business income, and also a typology of farms that is used today by the Secretary and the farm community to characterize American agriculture.
One area that you recently studied is assessing the impact of the global food system. Can you talk about this timely and important issue?
Well, U.S. agriculture is intertwined with global markets since the early part of the 20th century. As I mentioned, we're such a rich land base. We produce more than we can consume, and we're very competitive, not just with our resources, but also the ingenuity and know-how of U.S. farmers and agribusiness. So we export on average 25 to 30% of what we produce. We have some products where we export 80 or more percent of U.S. production. For example, almonds are some of the California specialty crops. The U.S. is just a huge player and dominant in world markets. So we've always been tied to world markets. That's the producing side. On the consumption side, overall, we're a well-off country. We like different foods from around the world, and we like to have, olive oil, tropical fruits. We've always had coffee and other things you can't produce here, but as we want a diverse diet, we choose to, buy strawberries in the winter or things that come from different markets that we can't produce here or different qualities that we enjoy having. So we're very tied both in our ag production and consumption to global markets. And that creates a range of issues for ERS to study. The big picture across markets as well as individual commodities and products.
Describe a program or a project that taught you something you did not expect.
In terms of learning new things, that's one of the parts I love about being administrator is I read the reports from across the agency and I'm always learning something new. I'll give a few examples of sort of surprising results that I think have made an impact and gotten a lot of attention. One is the price of healthy food. You hear a lot that it's cheaper to eat potato chips than an apple. And that, therefore, no wonder Americans don't eat a healthy diet. It's too expensive to buy the things that we really like. And yet, when you delve into the numbers and you think about how you measure this, you find that that's not necessarily true. If you measure the cost per calorie, then, potato chips look cheap because they're so high in calories. But if you look at the cost per serving, say, of broccoli or of eating an apple, it's much cheaper to buy that serving, and that's a more realistic measure of what you eat. And then we also took that and created the cost of different diets, and you can show by that approach too that it can be very affordable to eat a healthy diet. So I think that helped allay a myth might be out there about why people choose to eat poor, what they shouldn't. And we all do that from time to time. Another result that I found very interesting was for our food security research. We did a study a couple years ago looking at the role of disability status in household food security. And we found that the presence of someone with a disability was an extremely high explanatory factor in the household's food security status. And, this makes sense. They may have less employment opportunities. It could be more expensive in terms of living arrangements if you have a disability. But the study was able to use new data that we helped create where you could get, for the same individual, obtain a measure of their food insecurity and their disability status. So those are two results on the food side. On the farm side, I think it's always surprising the great diversity of American agriculture. And if you look at data on farm profitability, you see that as farms get bigger, they are more likely to be profitable. They have more capital resources, they tend to have lower costs. But interestingly, at all sizes of farms, all commodities, you find profitable farms. So you don't have to be a large farm to be profitable. You can really produce anything, and at any scale, it's a matter of having a good business model and good management of the operation. So those are a few examples of things that I think are surprising and interesting.
You are well known for your involvement in professional associations and organizations outside of USDA. Can you talk a little bit about your extramural professional experiences and focus on your time as administrator of ERS,
Sure.
please?
Well, it's good timing in that on Saturday, the annual meetings of the Applied and Agricultural Economics Society start in Boston. And this is the biggest professional association for my discipline, and I will be there. Saturday, I'm speaking about a federal agency's role with big data. And then later, and next week, I'm going to talk about how ERS fits into the agricultural economics research ecosystem. And these meetings are really valuable to, as administrator, to make sure the broader profession has a sense of what we do at ERS and our contribution. And I think that helps us recruit new talent. It helps us interest academics in collaborating with us on different topics. And it's an opportunity to make sure they know about the resources we have. And one big one is data, that we provide the farm survey data, the consumer data, in ways that they can apply to use it in their own research. So it's a lot of visibility and talking to people. Those presentations, I think, are good opportunities, but the highlight of the week will be the awards ceremony. Where several ERS staff will be recognized for their contributions in publications and win awards for the quality of their communication and the quality of their research. So these meetings have a lot of meetings. For me, it's more the visibility of ERS, but for our staff, it's an invaluable opportunity to present their research at an early stage, get feedback, and find out what colleagues working in the same areas are doing.
Well, Dr. Bohman, this interview has been very enlightening and interesting. Are there any other topics that you'd like to cover so that viewers in the future can learn more about ERS?
I think that we've covered a range of topics. There's one area I just want to bring up in addition. I've talked about our measurement of U.S. food security, but we also have done a lot of work at ERS over the years looking globally, and it's something I could have brought up at that point, measuring international food security. And we've done that starting in the 70s with the food crisis. We have kept our models up to date, learned new things, and we just released our report recently with a new approach to looking at international food security that focuses on income and prices. So I think, we really, as an agency, we cover the breadth of things. U.S. markets, producers and consumers, and we also do that with global markets. So thank you for asking me one more opportunity.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.